When people hear Greece and Croatia, they may think adults only trip. But Megan recently visited with her family of 5 and her girls loved it. Listen in as she shares how they did it with the help of points and miles.
Welcome to Points Talk with the Travel Mom Squad.
Hey, I'm Alex.
And I'm Jess. Let's talk points. Tackling Greece and Croatia with a family of 5 is no simple task. Today, our Director of Operations, Megan, is back on the podcast to tell us all about her family's spring break trip and how they leveraged credit card, points, and miles for some major savings along the way. So, Megan, let's kick it off with how you even came up with the idea to go to Greece and Croatia and then how you got there.
All right. So Greece has always been like my number one bucket list destination ever since Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants came out like 20 years ago.
Same. That's what got me too.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to go to Santorini. I want to go see those blue domes. And Croatia, my great grandfather came to the US from Croatia. So that was actually my first like trip ever on an airplane at 18 years old. We went with a cultural dance group that I was in as a kid. And the last like 20 years, I was like, I have to get back there. And then when Tim was like, yeah, let's get which he doesn't agree to often, I was so ready to just be like, yes, let's just kind of recreate kind of some of the highlights that I remember and show it to him and the girls.
First of all, I didn't know that your first time on an airplane was when you were 18 and it was an international flight.
Yeah, and I was sent by myself. When my parents didn't go with us, family friends, I went with them and roomed with their daughter who was like 25 at the time. So
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
it was a big thing. And that was like, we just road tripped everywhere as kids. So this was a really big deal and a really kind of like one of those like core memories of this was a big deal as a like teenager and kind of my first international trip experience.
That's
Awesome. So how did you, you were going to talk about how you chose it. You know, a lot of times people don't think of Greece as I'm going to take the kids. It's more typically like, especially Santorini, kind of a romantic destination. How did you end up deciding to bring the kids?
Yeah, so this question comes up in our Facebook group a lot. Like literally 4 posts this morning where something along the lines of, my kids are 3 and 5. Where should we go next summer? And honestly, I do all the trip planning, but I pick where I want to go and kind of consult everybody else. So I'm like, I want to go here. What do you think? And the kids, of course, are going to say yes to anything. They don't know any different. Like they just want to experience it and spend the time. And quite honestly, anywhere we go as a family where we're not running to 3 different places after school to all these different activities is a win for all of us. So I don't put a lot of like if somebody says like, "Oh, that's a great adults only place." I'm like, "Well, there's families there, there's parks there, there's playgrounds there, there's kid-friendly things, and it really just go where you wanna go and the kids will be happy."
I do have a question about that though, because I have not been to Croatia, but I've been to Santorini twice. And I distinctly remember the first time I went to Santorini, I was like, I would never bring Molly here because there's so many steps and like the cobblestone streets. I was like, I would never bring a kid in a stroller here. So is there any limit to like 8? Because your kids are a little older. Like Molly's almost 12. I think now I would take her to Santorini. But like, would you have taken your girls to Santorini when they were like 2 or 3?
If I only had 1 or 2 kids, yes. 3 kids, that kinda changes things a little bit where you kind of need to rely on a stroller or you need to rely on a baby carrier. But I would think we ditched the stroller around, like, 4, and ever since then, I think my kids would have been totally fine here. My sister's taking her 4-month-old and 2-year-old to Europe next week, and I'm like, "Go for it. Like, you'll have fun. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. People live everywhere. There are diapers everywhere. There are
Yeah.
playgrounds and families no matter where you go." So
That's what I always think too. It's like, well, if kids live there, then it's
Yeah.
probably a kid-friendly destination. There's going to be kid things you'll find. I
I
do
think
agree that there's some places that can be a little more difficult. Like I wouldn't want to take a stroller through Santorini either with the crowds of people and like stairs and stuff. But like you said, like we've been out of the stroller phase for a while now too. Like my youngest, he's almost 5. So I'd be like, okay, like we could do that. I wouldn't say it's my first pick, but we could do it.
I think it also depends on your child's personality because
Yes.
yes, children live in these destinations, but they're used to it. My little American child who's used to driving everywhere complains so much that her feet hurt when we're like walking and climbing. And so I think it also depends on your kid. Megan, I think your kids are probably used to you running them ragged and they're like, this is great.
Yeah, like, they're used to walking. Like, we walk miles and miles and barely any complaints, so we are very
That's
lucky
the
in that
key, you gotta
aspect.
train them when they're young.
Yeah, I need
That's
to just
part of it.
trade.
Like, we used to live right outside New York City, and we would go to New York City and walk and walk, like, we would never take the subway. We would just come in on Penn Station and just walk all the way up to Central Park and all the way back, and our kids, that's just all they knew,
Yeah.
and that's what it is.
All right. I'll travel to Greece with your kids, but maybe not mine. All right, so tell us how you flew into Greece, correct? So tell us how you got, and just as a reminder, Megan is based in the Rochester area, and this was a spring break trip. Was it mid-April
It was the
time
week
of
before
year?
Easter.
Okay,
Yeah, so we flew out of Toronto, which is like a 2.5, 3-hour drive for us, and we find so much more award availability out of there for flights with, like, 1 or 2 stops, because if we flew out of our airport, we'd have, like, 3+ stops probably. So we flew on Air France, and we flew in economy, and these flights were booked before the recent devaluation, so we paid 85,000 points total and $508 for 2 adults and 3 kids under 12. And just as a reminder, Flying Blue has that 25% discount for children ages 2 to 11, so Rose is gonna be 11 in January, so we are really trying to take advantage of this. But that same flight now, if I was to book it at those Sabre fares, it'd be 106,250 points, which still is a really, really great deal.
yeah, that's amazing.
There were no options to upgrade at check-in. I always looked. Our last flight, when we flew to Scotland, we were able to upgrade to premium economy on KLM. Air France had no options. It was a full flight. We had a high school, like, tour group, and they were literally half the plane.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but before we boarded, there's a KLM Crown Lounge at Toronto Airport, and your priority pass that you can get with your Amex Platinum or your Capital One Venture X, you can get into there for free with that priority pass. So Tim and I each have access. I'd put 2 guests on mine, and he put 1 guest on his, so all 5 of us can get into that lounge.
That's
And
awesome.
then yeah, and then another tip for Air France and KLM, they both have kids meals that you can order ahead of time. So when you book your flights, you can just go in and select, like, your meal options. Like, if you were vegetarian or vegan or whatever, you would just do the same thing and select the kids meals. And they also have these really cute little, like, kid activity kits. So KLM has one that has, like, little tic-tac-toe and sleep masks in it, and then the Air France one had these little wooden figurines. They had people and, like, a little track and an airplane and then, like, a little pencil and paper kit, and my kids just it's just the tiniest little thing, but it makes it so special.
Well, and it's nice because it's like you're in economy and they, like, offer, the kids meal and the little activity kits for the kids. It's a really nice touch, and I don't really get why they don't do that here with the US airlines.
Especially on those long international flights, it's just
Yeah,
something.
we flew Delta home from London, and we got jack diddly squat.
Southwest of Hawaii doesn't even guarantee plugs on your plane, so like you can't even charge your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's KLM and Air France. I just love their airlines. Their flight attendants are so lovely. They really give some extra attention to the kids, and It's we just have had such a great experience on all their flights. So we flew from Toronto to Paris, and we had a 2-hour layover there. We had a little bit of a rough time because when the kids are exhausted and they don't sleep well on the plane, they're all, like, nauseous. So we had a little rough time in that first, like, hour of getting everybody kinda, like, some water and some snacks, and we got some croissants to, like, some bread for their bellies.
Oh, no.
So we had to go through, immigration security again. Thankfully, we would travel carry-on only, and we were able to just go straight to immigration, and they actually had a special line for families. They were like, "You have the kids, go there," and there was, like, 1 person in front of us, which was super nice. It really made it go quick. And so we had to go back through security, and then we had to go to that Terminal 2F. It's kind of like a separate terminal where the smaller airlines, like, fly out of. And then from there, we took a 3-hour flight from Paris to Athens, and this was all on the same original ticket for that same points price. And we landed in Athens at 2 PM, And then I booked us separate tickets on Aegean Air from Athens to Santorini. So this was all the same day. So we flew out like Thursday night, landed Friday morning in Paris, flew to Athens like Friday afternoon, and then Friday evening we flew from Athens to Santorini.
That is
This is a
such a long
long
day. I
day.
am
This is making
tired.
me tired.
It's all worth it in the end, trust me.
See, this is what I mean, though. Like, if this were me, I would have spent the night in Athens at the Sofitel across from the airport and flown to Santorini the next morning. But Megan has no chill. And Megan is like, no, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're going hard.
Yeah, when you only have like a week-long spring break, there is no time to waste.
All right. So whether, regardless of your travel style, you're going to find something for you here on the Travel Mom Squad team.
Yes. And then at the Athens airport, since we had carry-on luggage, we didn't have to leave the airport to go to the carousel to get our baggage. So we literally just stayed in the airport and we just went straight up to the Gold Air Handling VIP lounge. And this lounge was probably one of the best airport lounges I have ever been to. And it was also included with our priority pass. The food was so good. It was so fresh and they had unlimited options, like anything you can think of. I would highly recommend if you have a couple hours at the Athens airport, definitely go check it out. So like I said, we flew from Athens to Santorini on Aegean Air. Aegean Air is part of the Star Alliance. So you can book it on United for about 8,000 points and $5.60 a person. But I realized a couple weeks before our trip that I hadn't booked our flights from Athens to Santorini, so I had to pay cash. And there were tons of award availability the week before and after us, but since it was Easter week and likely everybody was on spring break travel, there was just no option on the points. But they do have a family rate, and I booked this round trip on cash, and it was about $150 a person maybe. But since we didn't have any bags to check, but they would also give this family rate would give you a discount on the checked luggage. It gives a 40% discount on the kids' tickets ages 2 to 11, free seat selection, and boarding group 1. And it was cheaper than just booking regular tickets. So if you're booking through Aegean, look for that family rate because it was really great.
That's
So
really good to know.
yeah. So when we stayed at Airbnb in Santorini, I found it just on the Airbnb website, and it was amazing. So our Airbnb host arranged for a driver to meet us at the airport. It was 45 euros for the whole family. We just paid directly to him, and then he drove us from the airport to Ia. And there, a porter met us at the car, and he helped carry our bags and show us to where the Airbnb was because the roads are all pedestrian and it's kind of windy and you could easily get lost if you didn't know where you were going.
Yeah.
So it was really, really nice to have a driver to get us there and then the porter to walk us and get us the keys and show us how the apartment was set up and everything. And so this was our crazy travel day. It was 18 hours. And I'm so glad we did it though, because then we had 2 days in Santorini where we just did nothing. I had nothing planned. We were just going to wander around and just enjoy the view. And our Airbnb had a balcony, the view of the blue domes that everybody fights for positioning to get to. Our Airbnb, we walked out on the top balcony and that was our view, just right out of the apartment. And it was not even that expensive. We paid about $375 a night. And I saw in peak summer, it was about $600 a night, but I would still pay that.
Yeah.
It was a traditional cave house. It slept up to 6 people, had a full kitchen, 2 bathrooms, a washer. All the beds were on the main floor, but the only downside I would say is if you have little kids or people with mobility issues, to get upstairs to the really great balcony, it was practically a ladder. The stairs were so steep that we had to use hands and feet to climb up them.
So maybe not great for toddlers,
No, but
but
you could
it
block
sounds like
that off, and
yeah,
then
you
you
could
could go
block
out
it
there
off.
after you put the kids to bed.
That's a great idea. No, I think that those prices are totally reasonable, especially given being right in the middle of Ia, which tends to be the most expensive place to stay.
Exactly. And the Airbnb it wasn't old, but it's traditional. So all the walls are kind of plaster, and even the bathroom was kind of made out of plaster, and it had a arch over the shower. And so I'm 6 feet tall, so I was kind of trying to get in the shower, but I would still stay there again, even with that. And so since this was April, it was shoulder season. Our driver had mentioned it was quieter than he typically sees, but he thinks that was because they had the earthquakes earlier this year. And it was Easter week, and Orthodox and our Easter followed on the same Sunday. So that only happens every couple of years. So he thinks it was just people were getting ready for the holiday and weren't really traveling. But we loved it. The weather was 65 and sunny every day, and it was so quiet. And we walked, we got to our apartment, dropped our bags, and then we just walked everywhere. The kids love seeing the animals, like the mules and the cats and the dogs. Like there's so many stray cats, and we just like followed them all. We just like walking down the street, just following where they're going to see. And it was just so calm and quiet, and it just felt so special, especially without the crowds. And then on our checkout day, the porter met us at the Airbnb, walked us back to our driver that our Airbnb host set up for us, and we got back to the airport with plenty of time. And we flew back to Athens on Aegean Air, and that original ticket booked was round trip, and it's only 25 minutes in the air, so it's like you're up, you're down, you're there. It was so nice. We were there by 12:30. So one problem we ran into is we landed back in Athens, and we come out, and we're like, okay, how are we going to get to our hotel? And I'm looking around, and every single taxi is a sedan that fits 4 people. And I'm like, "Well, we have 5 people. How is this gonna work?" And typical me, I start, like, kinda slightly internally panicking. I'm like, "This is gonna suck. Like, how are we gonna do this?" And Tim's like, "Let me figure this out." Like, he's in the military. He's, like, calm and all as soon as I start, like, stressing, he starts, like, going back down to, like, more calm. And he's like, "Let me go talk to some people. We'll figure it out." And he walks up to a taxi, and it's like this older man who's probably in his like late 70s. And Tim's like, "We have 5 people with the kids. Can you take us to our hotel?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, get in." And it's just like his regular sedan car. And we're like, okay, so me and the girls sit in the back. Tim's at the front. The car smells like cigars. Like it reminded me of my grandpa. Like, and I was like, this guy, I trust him. He's gonna get us there. And he begins to tell us that the the rules if we get into an accident, his insurance is not gonna cover us because the rules say you can only have 4 people in your car, and we have 5, and we're just like, "Okay, whatever, like, it's too late, we're already in your car. Right,
Yeah.
let's
Oh
just
my
go."
gosh.
And then he proceeds to drive, like, twice the speed limit the whole way, cut across, like, 4 lanes on the highway, and I'm, like,
Oh
grabbing
my
Tim's shoulder, I'm like,
gosh.
"Oh my god." But we got her safe, everything was fine, it wasn't a big deal at all in the end, but it was just so funny because I was like, I don't know why I didn't think how we were gonna get from the airport to our hotel, and I just assumed there
Well,
would be,
I
like, van taxis.
yeah, I would have done the same thing because it's like when and I know you've had the same experience when you went to Amsterdam, like, we were able to get vans,
Yeah.
like, just outside the airport. Like, I think we did ours through Uber, but they had, like, bigger cars you could get.
Yeah, and Uber was not an option. When you went onto Uber, it literally just gave you taxi options. There were no actual Ubers. So I don't know if it doesn't work in Athens, but on the day that we were there were no options on Uber.
Yeah, I know it used to work in the past, but and maybe it just gave me a taxi option because we used that, but
Yeah.
it was just Mitch and I, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so we stayed at a smaller boutique hotel. I've shared before that my first point of trying to find a hotel for 5 of us is I go on booking.com and I just search like family suites, family rooms. I put in 2 adults, 3 kids and our dates and kind of just like scroll through the options and try to find something that has good reviews. And I found this really cute little family run hotel called Sweet Home Hotel. I booked it through booking.com and got 8% cash back on my Rakuten. Breakfast was included, and we had a family room, so it was like the penthouse, and it had a king bed, and they had 3 single beds set up with a bathroom, and then, like, a little, like, dining area, and I thought it was really great, the price was very reasonable, it was about $350 for the night, I think, because the other option I looked at was the Grand Hyatt Athens, and after Alex had said it's kind of removed from the city, and we would have needed
Yeah.
2 rooms there, and it was just getting too complicated where I was like, "We only have, like, a day and a half here, like, I don't wanna be wasting time."
Yeah, and we had to take an Uber around from there, and so you would have been in that same position of like, "How do we get back to our hotel?"
Yeah. But so this hotel, we dropped our bags and we just headed out sightseeing, and it was a 14-minute walk to the Acropolis. I didn't buy tickets ahead of time because I was worried. I didn't wanna be stressed for, like, making a specific time. But if you were traveling in summer, you want to have those time tickets because it does sell out and it gets very busy. But since we were there in April, we showed up at 3:40 and our tickets were for 4 PM. So we waited 20 minutes. The girls just kinda, like, ran around and played on the rocks and until our timed entry opened up. And it was 30 euros an adult, but kids were free. So, like,
Nice.
I thought 100% this is, like, one of those places you just kinda have if you're going to Athens, you have to go to the Acropolis.
Totally.
And one hack I have for that, and I think, Alex, you did this when you and Mitch went, but if you're going I was there in early September, but it was still when it was, like, pretty hot outside, and so we bought tickets for the last entry of the day, and then it was cooler, but also it was less crowded, and so I highly recommend that if that is an option for you too.
Yeah, that would be great because I was walking around just thinking, "I can't imagine being here in summertime," because there's no shade. There is
There's
nowhere to
0.
There's
get a
yeah,
break.
no shade at all.
And we spent about 1.5 to 2 hours here, and Rose is a huge, like, big Greek mythology buff, and so she was, like, our own little tour guide. She corrected me, like, 5 times. I was like, "Oh, there's that." She's like, "No, no, no, no." And and we love the National Geographic podcast, Greeking Out. It is such a fun, kid-friendly way to learn about Greek mythology, and the storytelling is really great, and when we're on road trips, that's always the girls', like, first request. So highly recommend if you're going to Greece to check out that podcast. And so from there, we headed over to the Acropolis Museum, and that was also great. Again, another thing of like sometimes you just have to like have a little team meeting with your kids of like so we had a long couple of days, a long couple travel days, and now we're in the big city in Greece, and everybody was kind of hot and tired, and we're getting to this museum, and they actually got one of the workers came over and asked them to be quiet, and I was like, we weren't being that loud, but like, that was right, so we kinda, like, had to pull everybody in and be like, "Okay, let's reset. Everybody calm down. Let's take a deep breath. There are other people here. We wanna be respectful to them too. Like, we're not the only ones here enjoying this." So, that happened right in, like, the lot. We were barely even in the museum, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, of course."
That's the realities of traveling with kids
Yes,
sometimes.
yes, but they did have a great kid-friendly section upstairs where they had, like, computers and games and, like, a big Lego set of that looked like the Acropolis, and it was definitely kid-friendly, but yes, obviously, like, let's try to keep our kids quiet in the museum. So I wish we had 1 or 2 more days in Athens, but the way we are heading to Croatia next, and the way it worked out with the flights, this was our only option. Like, the flight left on Monday, and that was the only direct flight that week into Dubrovnik. So I was really torn of trying to push our dates earlier, but we had school and all that stuff. So I wish we had probably, like, 1.5 to 2.5 days in Athens instead of basically, like, 24 hours.
Mhm.
So from Athens, we flew Aegean Air again to Dubrovnik, Croatia, and we paid $80 a person with that same family rate again, and the flight was about 1.5 hours. And we landed in Dubrovnik at like 2 o'clock, and we had like the strangest rental car experience I've ever had. so, so I booked a small Toyota Corolla hatchback through National Rental Car because with my Amex Platinum, you get the elevated status. And I was like, I have always had really great experience with them. And so I booked this tiny little, like, hatchback station wagon car because I was like, "Oh, we have 5 bags. Like, we can fit in any size car at this point. Our kids aren't that big." Like, they all 3 of them sit in the back. And it was about $300 for 5 days. We walk out of the airport over to the rental car place, and there's nobody there. And we're like, "Okay, well, where is everybody?" There's no sign. The door's open. You can walk in, and it's just like a booth. And so we stand there, and, like, 10 minutes later, like, 3 guys come walking up in the parking lot, and they're all, like, smoking cigarettes, like and we're like, "Oh, okay, I guess they were on break, like, no big deal, like, whatever." And they bring out our rental car, and I'm getting the girls we take those bubble bum booster seats for Eleanor and Amelia. Rose is now big enough, she doesn't need one. And so I'm getting their booster seats set up, I'm getting the bags in the trunk, and Tim's talking to the kid, and he's walking through showing him the paperwork, and he's going around showing him all the scratches on the car, and Tim hands me the paperwork, and you know how they have the little picture of the car with the X's of all, like, the dents and stuff? There were so many X's on the picture, you couldn't tell that it was a car. I'm
Oh my god.
So were you like, "Well, we don't have to worry about scratching it
and
because"
I was like, "Okay, whatever." I walk around and I'm like, "Okay, the tires look good." I'm like, "Check the oil, like, make sure there's oil in there." And then Tim gets in and there's a quarter of a tank of gas. It's not full. And so he asked the kid, he's just like, "Is this supposed to be this empty?" And the kid's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, just turn it in like that." And we're like, "Okay, so the next person also gets, like, an empty car?"
And you're like, "Are you gonna charge me though because I didn't fill it up?"
And, like, it was so straight, it ended up being totally fine, but we did have a moment of panic first where I was like, "Okay, this is, like, really kinda screwed up, like, I don't know what I'm doing, like, I'm a little stressed out, but
You're like, this doesn't feel very legit."
yes. And it was, like, right at the airport, so that's why it was so crazy. And so luckily, the gas station was, like, 10 minutes down the road. It was, like, downhill. So I was like, "Okay, well, if we have to coast there, we'll coast there, like, whatever." So we get gas. I cleaned and the other thing, the outside of the car was, like, covered in pollen, so we could barely even see out of the windshield. So I had to clean the windows off while pumping gas. And so then it was about from the airport to Old Town Dubrovnik's about 25 minutes, and it was really, really easy. I just put it into Google Maps. No big like, it was no big deal getting there. We had an Airbnb here too. This was another one that slept up to 6, and it had free parking, which was amazing. They had a full kitchen, 2 bathrooms, a huge, like, gated garden, which was great because the girls at this point just needed somewhere to just run around and play. And it was only a 5-minute walk to the main gate to the old town, and the price was about $225 a night. So, again, like Airbnb, you could put this on your Capital One Venture X and erase the purchase.
Well, like, you're just not gonna find like, if you have to get a hotel, you're getting 2 rooms.
Yeah.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly,
it
and there
might
isn't
even so to get 225 for your whole family of 6 is amazing.
yeah, and their location was so good.
We will link all of the the hotels and the Airbnbs that Megan stayed at in the show notes, so you don't need to be, like, writing this down. You can just go to the show notes, and we will have everything linked there. But, yeah, these prices are great for a family of 5, and I like that you don't use points for everything, and you're like, "We're gonna use points for what makes sense,
Mhm.
and when it makes sense to stay in a vacation rental or a hotel with a family suite, then we're gonna do that." So it doesn't have to be none of us use points for everything. I think people get it in their head that, like, if their trip is not 100% free, they're doing it wrong, which is not the case at all.
Yeah, and I have 2 hotels later that we did use points on just because they were, like, screaming deals,
Yeah.
but if you had those, like, venture miles, you could erase your purchase. We are new to Capital One. I just got my first Venture X last week, so I will eventually probably use those points for something like this, but again, $225 a night, and you're right in the old town the week before Easter over spring break. I would more than happily pay that to fit up to 6 people in one, hotel room. But there is a Hilton hotel, the Hilton Imperial Dubrovnik, and that is bookable on points. We could see it from the Old Town main gate, and it was right next to, like, the little grocery store that we went to buy snacks in. So if we didn't need 2 rooms and we were just adults, or you have Hilton points or whatever to use, it is a really great option. The location is amazing, and you can walk everywhere from there. So we spent a couple days in Dubrovnik. We walked the wall up. You can go like up onto. It's a walled city, and you can walk up on the wall. We did that with the girls. We saw people with little kids doing it, like toddlers. People had babies and baby carriers. The stairs are pretty steep to get up, but once you're up there, it's contained. Like the walls are up. Like since I'm so tall, they're up to like pretty much my chest. So so there was no worries about kids falling off the wall or, like, being crazy, but the views are amazing, and it's just a really cool, unique experience that you really can only do here. We spent a lot of time just wandering around. You can go down to the port, you can go if you're a Game of Thrones fan, there are tons of Game of Thrones, like, sites to see here. The stairs where, like, Cersei at the it's, like, one of the most famous scenes from Game of Thrones, like, people were lining up to get their pictures there, and there's a guy playing the accordion, playing the theme song from Game of Thrones. So, if that is your thing, you will find lots of things here. But what's even with kids, there are lots of stairs. It's, like, up and down, you walk all over. It's all kind of like these back alleyways. We had really great food. The food was so easy. We had no problem finding just, like, plain chicken and french fries almost anywhere in Greece or Croatia. And
Honestly, my
so
mom and I were talking about this just on our last trip. Croatia, so, like, I wasn't expecting that, but it was one of our favorite food of any country we've been to. Like, the
mm,
food in Croatia was so good, so much, like, good fresh fish,
yep.
and Greece has really good food too. I, like,
Mhm.
really like both of those for food.
Yeah, and, like, what I was looking forward to is cevapci. They're, like, these little, like, sausage, like, meat, and you get served with, like, fresh onion and french fries and, like, lettuce and tomato, and that's something that, like, my family grew up eating, and I was like, "I cannot wait to go and eat this."
Yes.
And so, like, that was really great and to, like, introduce the girls to a lot of that stuff that, like, I don't make that stuff on a regular basis, so it was just really, really cool and special. And so from Dubrovnik, we kind of road tripped. So we had our rental car, and from there we drove north. And our next stop was going to be Split, but on the way we kind of like zigzagged our way up, and we went to Mostar, Bosnia. And this was about 2.5 hours north from Dubrovnik. And I almost canceled this part of our trip at the last minute because I was reading online and people had me all freaked out. And they were like, the border crossing's so strict. You have to have special insurance. They're going to search your car. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this even worth it? And I was like, no, we're doing this. This was on the plans. I'm not chasing it. I really want to go here. And we crossed that Noom, and that's like one of the border crossings, and we had 0 issues. We were stopped for less than 2 minutes. We like, when we pull up to, like, a border crossing, we, like, put the back window down. Tim puts his driver window down so, like, because they wanna see how many kids are in the back. I have all the passports, like, open to our passport pages so they can easily, like, flip through them and scan them. And the guy literally looked at every single one, scanned every single one, stamped them, and was like, "Have a nice day." And that was it. And I was like, "I'm so glad I didn't cancel this." They didn't even ask for any type of special insurance or anything that I was reading online that said you had to have. So, it was great. I totally recommend it. It was way easier and way less stressful than I made it out to be in my head.
Good, good.
Yeah, but this was such a unique city. So Mostar's kind of like a mix of Eastern and Western cultures. It's kind of a big melting pot for that area. And so there are, like, the Croatians are Catholics and the Serbians are Orthodox and a lot of Bosnians are Muslim. And this is kind of like a place where they all have, like, cohabitated for a very long time. And so the Bosnia is not part of the European Union. So I was a little worried about, I was like, do we have to get money out? Is this going to be a cash heavy society? Like, I'm not sure. They took euros everywhere. Like, nobody even questioned it. They're so close to the borders of the other countries that do take euros that they probably don't even think twice. And so I looked up ahead of time and found a parking lot. And so I put it into Google Maps, and I was like, okay, we're gonna go here and this is where we're gonna park, and we're just gonna walk to the old town. And we go and park, and there's a guy standing there, and it has a big P on his, like, sandwich board sign, like, spray painted, and he's wearing an orange vest. And I was like, all right, that looks legit enough. Like, so we parked, and it was like 10 euros for the whole day or 5 euros for 3 hours. So we just did 10 euros because I was like, I don't want to stress getting back in 3 hours, like, whatever. So he has us parked in a very specific way. It is a very small parking lot, and they have people park, like, both sides of it. And so we park our car, and we took the keys with us. So I was like, it'll be fine. So we go to the old town, we walk all around. The star of the show here is Starry Most, and that is their old bridge. And it is kind of like the way it's built is one of, like, the highest arches of a man-made bridge or something like that. So it's really, really neat to see. And one of the cool things is they have these people who are bridge divers, and it's kind of like a rite of passage for the young men who live here. And they walk along the bridge and down underneath, and they collect money, and people are giving them tips and hats. And at one point, somebody was like, "Well, he's up there. Like, who are you? Like, why are you collecting the money?" And they're all like, "We all work together. Like, we're all like, this is our thing." And they dive off of this bridge after they collect, like, a certain amount of money. And so we got to see this a couple times, and it was just so cool and unique. So I'm like, "This is crazy." I'm like, "Who would do this?" And we're sitting at the top of the bridge, and the wind is, like, whipping, and we're like, "Oh my god, there is no way this is safe."
So you did not dive off the bridge, Megan.
No, we did not, but we did watch the professionals do it.
Okay, okay.
And, the other thing that was really cool is, we so the Muslim call of prayer happens 5 times a day, during their, like, prayer times, and it is recited by, I hope I don't say this right, a muezzin and broadcasted from the minarets. And so we were standing on top of the bridge around, like, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we start to hear the call to prayer, and I was like, "This is so cool." Like, what a cool and unique experience. And we're pointing out, and we could see, like, 5 minaret towers from where we were standing. And Tim looked at me and he was like, "The first time I heard this was when I was in Iraq in 2005, like serving in the Marines." And then when we met in college, we met in Arabic class. So I was like, "This is such a full circle moment for us." Like, and I was
That
So
is
like, "This
so
is
cool.
so
cool.
cool." And I like this is what travel does like for you. Like it is just such an amazing thing to be able to experience this with your kids and your spouse
Yeah.
and all that. And I'm just like, it was just so amazing. I just love it. And I will like never forget that we took like a little video of the moment and the girls are just standing there listening. And I was like, I just love this.
That's like okay, this is why we fly 18 hours and go through all of this is for these full circle moments where we can, like, have these bonding experiences as a family.
Yes.
Yes, yes, and that's, like, just 100% it, and it's just no distractions, and it's just your family being together in a place where you're all kind of uncomfortable, and you're all trying to, like, figure out what's being said to you and what's on the menu, and, like, I
Mhm.
just love that, like, that feeling of, like, stretching you on the inside of, like, "Okay, this is making me a better person." Like,
For sure, I love that.
and so we had just spent the afternoon there, we spent a couple hours, and then we went, from Mostar back up to Split, which is, like, further north on the coast of Croatia, and the roads looked like American highways. They were perfectly paved. Croatia joined the European Union about, I think, 2013, and then they switched to Euro in 2023. And since then, the European Union has been helping them update like, every highway connecting the tourist spots are all brand new, like, asphalt highways. So we left Bosnia and entered back into Croatia. That was also super easy. We had 2 passport checks. We had one leaving Bosnia, then, like, that little, like, in between space, and then going into Croatia, they checked our passports again. And the only thing they asked, they were like, "You don't have any alcohol or cigarettes?" And we're like, "No." So I guess people probably go to Bosnia to buy them. Maybe they're cheaper there, I'm not sure. But that was the only question we were asked, and they stamped our passports and sent us on our way. And so we arrived in Split around 5 p.m. and we had 2 nights in Split, and we booked a Mr. Smith hotel. And I could not believe the deal on this because they are not in the Hyatt award chart. They are, the other what am I saying?
They, like, have
The
dynamic pricing.
Yeah, they have
Yes,
dynamic pricing.
they have dynamic pricing. So this was the Brig Boutique Hotel in Split, Croatia. We paid 17,750 points per night per room, and breakfast was included, and parking was
That's a
20 euros a
deal.
night, and that was, like, right there. But I could not believe the deal in this hotel. I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna use points because that totally makes sense." The cash price wasn't crazy. It was probably like $200 or $300, but for some reason, the points price was so good. So we paid 35,500 points for each room for the 2 nights. And the location, we walked everywhere. We parked the car and didn't use it again till we left. And it's right next to the beach. So if you're going in summertime, this hotel, literally, you walk out the front door, turn left, and the ocean, like the water is right there. So if you are like beach people, this is the place to stay.
It sounds like the place for Alex and Pam.
That
Yes.
yeah, we did walk down to the beach, but it was cold and kinda rainy, so it was not that enjoyable.
Mhm.
But the breakfast also was amazing. The breakfast was so good. They had made to order eggs, and then they had all this fresh food, and then prosecco was included, so that you could, like, make mimosas. They had a coffee machine, and then they had a juice machine that was I've never seen a juice machine before. This was very cool for the kids, and it was like you just push your button, and they gave you so, like, apple cranberry, then it had plain water and sparkling water. Um, and it was just so great. And we only have explorer status and didn't send any emails ahead of time, like asking for anything. Like we just showed up and each of our rooms had a bottle of wine and snacks. And I was like, this is such a deal. Like,
That is such a good deal.
yeah. And it had like a little handwritten note of like welcoming our family and hope you enjoy your trip. And it was this hotel felt much fancier than we are, but it was still really, really great. We had each room sleeps up to 2 adults and 1 child under 12. So they gave us a rollaway in one of our rooms for free. There was no charge, but there were no connecting rooms. So we were kinda, like, on the corner of the 3rd floor, and our doors were, like, right next to each other, but
Mhm.
Tim took 1 kid and I took 2 kids in my room, and it was totally fine. And again, in Split, like, we really had no real plans here besides, like, I wanted to go to Diocletian's Palace, which is, like, the sight to see here, and we wandered around, and since it was right before Easter, everybody was out at the markets, and they had butcher shops, like, we literally see this guy pushing a shopping cart with, like, newspaper in it, and we're looking, and then it's like a pig split was sticking out. Like, we went and bought his pig for his pig roast that he was gonna have on Easter at the market, and I was like, "You don't see this where we live, like, this is
Oh
so
my
cool."
gosh.
And they had, like, the cutest little, like, they like, a little part of the park had, like, big giant Easter eggs that were painted, and you could get your pictures with them, and they had signs up for, like, Happy Easter, and it was really, really cute, and, it was right on the water, and again, like, the food was really great. There was more of a, Italian influence here, so there was a lot of, like, Italian foods, and the seafood, like, you just cannot get better seafood, I don't think. I out of all the places we've traveled to, I think Croatia really kills it on the
I'm with
seafood.
you.
Y'all are really selling me on Croatia just from the food alone.
You know what, Megan? I was so sad I forgot to tell you about this pizza place, and I'm gonna put a link to it in the show notes because I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I just sent it to somebody in a DM the other day, and it's, like, in Split, like, totally walkable, and they had this, like, dessert pizza that had,
Oh.
like, white chocolate and raspberries, maybe regular chocolate too, and pistachios. I mean, we got 'em to go, we got it, like, every day while we were there, and it's so good. So I was really like, "Shoot, I forgot to tell Megan about that." But it
Yeah.
looks like you did good. You found some great food, it
Yeah,
sounds
we
like.
did, except for the girls' free ducks. One of my meals had it was like a traditional food. I wish I could wrote it down. And it came with, like, prawns and had, like, the eyes, like, it was, like, full-size prawns, and Rose is like, I can't even look at your plate, like, can we just get rid of this?" While
Oh,
she's eating
funny.
her, like, plain chicken and french fries.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny.
But so from Split, we just kept going. So, like, Split's on the western coast, and then Zagreb is where we were flying home, which is the capital. So that was, like, further, like, northeast. So we left the hotel after breakfast and headed towards Zadar, which is also on the coast. There is a brand new Hyatt Regency here. This is where I was trying to stay, but they opened up, like, a week or 2 after we were going to be there.
Dang.
So if you don't wanna stay in Split, Zadar, it would be another great option, and it's kind of, like, across the water, and somebody actually shared in the Facebook group that they had recently stayed here, and you can pay, like, a little, like, rowboat person to bring you because it's across the river from the old town, and the rowboat will take you across from the Hyatt Regency over to the old town for, like, a couple euros. And I was
That
like, "What a
sounds so
cool
cute.
experience." And it
I'm
looked really
trying to
lovely.
do you know what, category it is?
Oh, I should have made a note. I
I'm
think it's
looking
either category 4 or 5.
I'm
It's
looking it
it's
up
not super high, I don't think.
because I remember seeing the review. Yeah, it's a category 4.
Yeah. So you can use free
So,
You
night
did
certificates
that.
here.
you could use it looks beautiful, and I remember seeing that review in the Facebook group, and
Mhm.
it was very positive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's brand new, like, how can you beat a brand new hotel?
Yeah.
But the real reason we went to Zadar is because it has the only continuous sea organ in the world. And I was like, "This if that's the only one, then we're gonna go see it." It's like one of those, like, roadside attractions where I was like, "Nope, we're gonna go do this."
Alex,
There
did
are
you go see the only continuous
We
sea
didn't
organ?
go here. Only did Dubrovnik, Split, and Hvar, so we didn't
Yeah.
make it there.
But there are 2 others. There's one in San Francisco and there's one in the UK, but they only work at high tide. This one works all day long, and it was very cool. It's kind of built into the concrete walkway, and it's like as the waves, like, come in, it pushes the air through and makes, like, the organ sounds. So it doesn't play anything, like, specific, but it was very unique and very cool to just kinda sit there and listen and try to figure out how is this working? The other thing that I always kinda stress about with a rental car with is parking. It was jam-packed because everybody was there for Easter at the markets, but there was parking all over the old town, and it was really hard. We had to circle multiple times, and finally we found a spot, and we're like, "Yes, like, this is a great spot." It was an actual spot. We pull in, we're gone for, like, an hour and a half, and we got a ticket. It was
Ew.
like and of course, it's not in English, it's in Croatian. So we're using Google Translate on our phone trying to figure out how do we pay this ticket. I'm like, well, worst case, we'll find like the town hall. But then I'm like, okay, well, Easter's like tomorrow. Like, how am I gonna like what if they're not open? So I figured out I was able to just pay from my phone. It was 19 euros. And I was like, well, parking was probably gonna be a couple euros anyway. So it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, you're like, it was worth it to not drive around longer.
Yeah, but, like, just another, like, proof of, like, things are not perfect when you're traveling and, like, stuff is going to go wrong but it's not the end of the world. You will just, like, take a breath and figure it out, and it was fine. So, from Zadar, we just stopped there for a couple hours, and then we continued about 1.5 hours north to Plitvice Lakes National Park, and to me, this is probably one of, if not the most beautiful place I've ever visited. It is a national park. There's no railings, there's water, rapids everywhere, and you kinda walk on these, like, wooden platforms. We saw this one family with a little kid, they were letting it was just a toddler, like 2 or 3, stepping off the boat, and he almost fell between the boat and the dock. Like,
Oh, dear.
"Please watch your kids, please hold their hands," like, and they also brought a scooter. I was like, "People, this is not the place for scooter."
No, we went there too, Megan, and it is definitely not the place, and we were there in May, and it was a little more crowded, but I know in the summer it gets so, so crowded, so I don't know if you probably would wanna, like, plan your time, like, the earliest of the day, I would imagine would be better because it's gonna be busy. We went from Split, and we, like, hired a driver to drive us up, like, in a van. So
Mhm.
it was me, my mom, and my sisters, and he drove us up in a van and stayed there the whole day with, like, just waited for us, and then we were ready to go, he drove us back to Split. So if you're not going, to Zadar, then you can still make it work. It's just a little bit longer of a drive.
Yeah, and then we got there, like,
But
later
it's
in the
worth it. I think
afternoon.
I'm with you, it's a must. Like, it's incredible.
Like, the water is, like, the most, like, greenish, like, blue aqua. It's because, like, the way the moss is under the water that gives it this color, and they have a really great huge waterfall. It's, like, the biggest one in Croatia, um, but I it would be really tricky with toddlers, and I would definitely have my kids in toddler backpacks, and because even people like, you're supposed to kinda go, like, the same direction, like, everybody's kinda, like, walking the same direction, but there were a lot of people coming back the other way, and I'm like, "No, like, this walkway is only, like, 3 feet wide, like, why are you coming at me right now?" But I would easily plan at least 3 to 4 hours, but probably longer in summertime. We took the F route, and when we got there, we asked her, like, "Well, how long would this take?" And she was like, "At least 3 hours." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's already, like, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock." I'm like, "We don't have time." Like, I don't have time to do 3 hours. Like, but we really had to go the whole route to see everything. And so it was like a
Mm.
5-minute boat ride, then you wait again, and then it's like a 15-minute boat ride, and then it's a few miles of walking on these, like, wooden planks with stairs, and then you walk up a giant hill at the end, and a shuttle takes you back to the entrance.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely like, we wore, like you wanna wear comfortable shoes. You're gonna be doing a lot of walking. Like,
Yeah.
we had a little bit of hiking. I don't know what route we took, but it's like we were walking through the forest
Yeah,
at
and,
times.
we didn't have we kinda, like this was what she recommended for families. She was like, "Our families usually do this one," and I was like,
Yeah.
"That's what we're doing." And we did it in about 2 hours, even though she said it would take about 3, but we hustled. Like, I was like, "Let's go. We're not stopping." Like, we don't have time. It's gonna get dark. And so we got the shuttle back to the entrance. We ate at the little cafeteria there. They were so cute. Like, they were so happy to have families there, and like, the ladies, like, it was just reminded me just like my grandma, like, these old bubbas just like, "Here's your food. Do you have enough?" It's a cafeteria, and they're like, "We'll give you more." And I'm like, "No, we don't need more. Like, it's okay."
Yeah.
So then we got back in the rental car and we drove 2 hours to Zagreb, which is the capital, and we didn't arrive till like 7 PM. So we didn't have any time to do anything in Zagreb. This is the capital of the country. We would have to come back and do that again. And it's just we just ran out of time, and we wanted to be back for Easter, and Tim really likes to get back on, like, a Saturday, so we have a day to recover before we go back to, like, work and school and all that stuff. So this was, Friday night that we got to Zagreb, and we booked the Canopy by Hilton Zagreb City Center hotel. And a standard 2 double bedroom sleeps up to 4, which is great, but obviously we still needed 2 rooms. And it was only 20,000 Hilton points per night. But since there was recently a 25% transfer bonus from Amex to Hilton and Amex transfers to Hilton 1 to 2, I only paid 8,000 points a night, which
That's
is a steal.
crazy. Yeah.
That's a steal. But even at 20,000 points a night,
Hilton.
it's 10,000 Amex points,
Yeah,
you know? It's
that's a great
pretty
Yeah.
deal.
that's
And
Yeah.
I would say the location is really great. You are in the city center. They comped our parking. I'm not sure if that's always the case. I have Hilton Gold status for my Amex Platinum, so I'm not sure if that was what it was. And if we hadn't left the crack of dawn, I would have had breakfast for 2. So that would have been included, but we left it literally at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Um, but the parking was right next to the hotel, super easy. Location was wonderful. I would definitely come back and stay here again, especially for that price. Like that was a great deal, especially when you need 2 rooms, or if you have a family of 4 and you can sleep in 1 room, like, that would just be awesome. So our flight the next morning was 6 a.m. And it was a Saturday, the day before Easter, and this is kind of like I actually had this flight home booked before I had anything else booked, and it was business class on KLM, and I paid the 212,500 miles and $1,450 for all 5 flights total, and that again was before the devaluation, so it was the 50,000 for adult and 37, 500 for a kid. But I actually had booked this flight home, and I was like, "Okay, well, now let's work backwards." I was like, "Wow, we could fly into Greece and then do this and then fly into Dubrovnik and just road trip our way out," and that's just how it all happened. Because I was like, "This is a really great deal," and especially right on our spring break, it was so perfect, I couldn't pass it up.
When you find 5 business class seats, you got it at standard pricing.
Yeah.
You gotta just lock it in.
Yeah, we've done that too, where it's like you'll find a really good flight home from somewhere, and it's like, "All right, I'm guess I'm building a trip around this flight home. We'll figure the rest out." Because, like Jess said, like, when you find a good deal and I'm sure those business class flights made that like, whatever, 3 or 4 AM wake up call a little easier because 'cause you're like, "Oh,
That's what
it's fine, we gotta get to fly business class."
we literally kept saying that. I'm like, "Everybody just hold it together. It'll be so much better once we get off the airplane."
And that's usually not the case. You're usually dreading
Oh,
a
Yeah,
yeah.
flight home.
yeah.
So,
So our flight was 6 a.m. and we flew from Zagreb to Amsterdam on KLM, and that was just the European business class, so the middle seats were blocked. I will say I did have one complaint, was that the flight attendant kept talking to Tim, and he would be like, Mr. Condello," and then he, like, wouldn't say anything to me, and I'm like, "Excuse me, I booked this whole trip."
Yeah, you're like, "He doesn't know, you are talking to the wrong person." No, I
oh my
have that same
gosh.
pet peeve, Megan, when they'll be, like, at a hotel restaurant and they'll hand him the check. I'm like, "He's not paying for this. It's my Hyatt card that's on this account, like, hand it to me."
Yeah, and I mean, it's, like, kind of a minor thing, but, like, I'm sitting there with Eleanor and Rose were in front of me, Amelia's sitting with me, I'm getting everybody settled, and I was like, "It would have been nice to be addressed by name." And not while,
Yeah.
Tim's sitting by himself across the aisle just relaxing.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Oh, man.
so the another thing people always question about is, like, what to do with your rental car because we had to drop it off super early, like, before they were open. So we drove to the airport, just followed the signs, literally rental car in English, followed the signs, pulled in, found the one that was ours, so it was, like, national rental car, and they had, like, parking spots with the different names on them. We picked a spot that said national rental car, and then they just had drop boxes for the keys. So it was super easy. There was no worry of, like, there was no people you had to look for. You didn't have to worry about that it was, like, 4 o'clock in the morning. It was no big deal.
Well, and based on how you received the car, it didn't really seem like they were gonna be too thorough with their inspection when you brought it
I know,
back.
and he probably returned it with more gas than we got it with. Um, so we dropped off the rental car, headed into the airport, and then they had a priority security line for business class tickets. So on my KLM ticket, it said there was, like, priority, security, so we just, like, showed them our boarding passes and went straight through. The airport was pretty hopping for that early in the morning. There were a lot of flights going out. All the restaurants were open. They kinda opened, like, right at, like, 5 a.m. It was, like, an hour before our flight that we could, like, get into the actual, like, seated area with all the restaurants and stuff. Um, Super easy. So we took that flight to Amsterdam. Then we had access to the Crown Lounge, which is their, like, flagship lounge in Amsterdam, which we've been in a couple of times now. It is really great. Even if we didn't have business class tickets, I would consider probably paying for it, especially if you had, like, a long layover. We had about 3.5 hours. So we got in there, we like hung out for a little bit, and then we had our flights home, and it was really great. The flight attendants were wonderful. We got 5 more Delft Blue houses, which is the real perk of flying KLM.
Man, you have 10 now?
We have 10 now. No, I'll leave my windowsill in the kitchen.
I've only got 4.
I'm
Yeah,
never
and
gonna catch up.
I did download the KLM Houses app to mark all the ones that we have, and the flight attendants were so lovely of, like, the girls were worried about picking one, they didn't wanna get one we already had. So I was like, "Pick which one you want, and then I'll check." Like, don't, like, ask because there's 106 of them, so I'm not gonna read you 100 options when we only have 5. Like, just pick one, and then we'll check, and it all worked out. They were really excited. The one Rose picked ended up being the Anne Frank house, so she thought that was really special.
Oh, that's really cool.
And
Nice.
it like, again, like, KLM just I loved it. We had a wonderful experience. Flight attendants were lovely. The food was really good. It was great.
That's awesome, Megan. Well, we always love hearing about your family trips. And this one has me itching to take my boys a special. I don't know if we're ready for Greece yet with all of them, but Croatia, I totally feel like we could totally do that. And I when did I go? I don't know. It was like 2022 maybe, maybe 23. I think 2022. And I am just like all of that is just bringing all of those memories back. I'm like, "Oh, I want to go back and see it all and take my family next time." So anyway, if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate it so much if you'd leave us a review and share it with a friend. Thanks so much for your support.
Thanks so much for listening to Points Talk with the Travel Mom Squad. Make sure to hit the subscribe or follow button from wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. Want to start jet setting even faster? Follow the links in the show notes to learn about everything we discussed in today's episode. And to stay connected and follow along, follow us on Instagram at Travel Mom Squad. We can't wait to see where in the world points and miles take you.